Well, it feels like nothing on earth. I mean, can you imagine putting your son on a team to win score the winning goal in an All Ireland or in a World Cup or a European Cup? That's how I felt for the last two furlongs of the Grand National. I said this could happen. I, it's great that he's won the national, but it's great. I mean, it's a different league when you actually train the horse that won the national. That your son and you put your son up to ride it, because as any manager will tell you, when you put your son on a team, you get a lot of criticism that things go wrong, but he did everything right and he deserves a ride on it. And, so I was, the minute I thought he had a chance, I just enjoyed the whole lot. I just couldn't breathe the last two furlongs. I said, this is really going to happen. And the things that go through your head, wishing my mother was there, my parents were there. Patrick said he was wishing his friend Ronan Lawler, who was killed off a horse when he was only 21, was there. You start to think of the people who would really have enjoyed it. They're another friend of mine, what we call the Doc Doyle, my own doctor and pal. All those people that would really enjoy it, they weren't there, and that's what got me, the emotion of the whole thing. And then the owner's wife, Sadie, who I went to school with in babies and senior infants and first communion, and I hadn't met her for years, about 50, 60 years, and we just happened to meet at a race meeting one day and got chatting, and she said to her husband, I want to buy a horse and have it with Willie, and here we are, Nick Rockett. Knickers, as he's called in the yard, but that's his nickname, and it's just some feelings. I couldn't get over it. I mean, to me, the whole emotion of it was huge.
You're a man who's so used to success. You're a very pragmatic man when you're watching your stars in action. How are they running? How are they going to finish?
Yeah.
At what point in that finish did you stop thinking about I Am Maximus and Meeting of the Waters and all the others and go, oh, my son could win the Grand National on my horse?
Well, it's funny, going to the first fence, I was trying to figure out where all my horses are, and then I said, what's the most important horse? And most people would have said, I Am Maximus, which he was in racing terms, but I said, to me as a father, most important horse is the one my son is riding. And I fixed on his colours for every jump, and then actually he was in the middle of our runners, so between the jumps I was able to look right and look left and behind and in front of him and pick up the other runners. So throughout the whole race, I just fixated on Patrick jumping. And jumping the canal turn, I thought, this is lovely. He's going to put in a lovely little neat step and turn left and gain length. And instead, the horse stood off a full stride from where he should have stood off. And I said, oh, cripes, he'll probably fall, or something that's turned sharp will run into him. And nothing like that happened. He lost a bit of ground because he threw in such a good jump. But went through, that's the first time it went through my mind that this could happen. This horse has so much energy left in him. You could see that from the way he jumped, and then I really just concentrated on him, and I could see our other horses, some of them coming, some of them going, but most of them coming. And I was just hoping down to every fence that nothing would fall in front of him, that he wouldn't make a mistake. And that's the way it was the whole way. And I thought this horse had a real chance of winning, and coming to the elbow, which is a very important part of the race, all the jumping is done. You've got to get the elbow and have your horse balanced to get around it. And it looked like I Am Maximus came up and he's outside that he was going to win the race, beat him, and I said to myself, well, got a great run, fantastic. And then he rounded the elbow, and within about 3 strides, you knew that he had more energy left than the other horse. And then I couldn't speak. My whole concentration was, I just kept to myself, take a breath, take a deep breath, and just breathe. And all these thoughts were flooding my mind, and I was really just concentrating on breathing. And everything else went out the window. I didn't even realize we finished 3rd and 5th and 7th. And I was standing beside JP. He was just to my left in his box watching it. And I didn't even commiserate with him that we'd beaten him. That went out of my head. He said, well done, and I said, thanks. Didn't even think to say sorry. That was it. Your son riding the Grand National in our world. We think the racing world is the centre of the universe, of course, but it's not. In our world, it is the centre of the universe. The Grand National is the race we all want to win. And if you can't win it, you want your son to win it. And it happened. It was amazing.
Nicely put. You touched on it there. 1, 3, 5, 7. 1, 2, 3, 5, 7.
Yeah.
The top 5 put you right in the reckoning to retain your British Champions title.
Yeah.
You're going heavy-handed at Ayr again. Is that the next box that you want to tick?
Yeah, we've got to try and do that. Funny enough, before the National, the National was the third day, so we had to enter all our horses the first 2 days, Thursday and Friday, and they all ran very well, and we gained enough prize money that when what happened, which was unprecedented, it put us right back into the picture. So we have to go for it. Yeah.
And 3 weeks to go.
3 weeks to go, and a lot of our bullets are fired, but I'm sure Dan has fired a lot of his bullets today. And you know, it's going to be tough going. We've got to make up about 130,000, but that's got to be without a reply. So I'm sure Dan's going to have plenty of horses in the big races too. So it's just not as easy as it sounds. We could win the 130,000 maybe, but Dan could win 200,000. You know, it's not done and dusted yet, even though the bookmakers think it is.
2 brief questions for you before I let you go. What now for Nick Rockett? Patrick mentioned Cheltenham Gold Cup maybe going to retain it next year. He's got an entry in the Irish Grand National. Is that going to come to pass?
I doubt he'll go to the Irish Grand National, but he might end up in Sandown on the last day if we need him. You know, everything is possible, but he's good enough to be a Gold Cup horse, yes.
And that's going to be considered over the winter. Be some sub to bring off the bench for Sandown, really.
Well, for the last 2 years, actually, when Nick's wife died, Sadie, he wasn't, you know, he was down as one would be, and we were going to Melbourne with a horse, Vauban, for the Melbourne Cup, and Nick asked me for a ticket. He was never in Melbourne before, and I said, look, join our team. Me and my pals were going out there, and he joined our team, and he'd become part of our team. And he came out again last year, so it was a huge release for him. So we'll probably have to go to Melbourne before we decide what our plan is for next year, and drink some cheap wine somewhere that we always are late for our restaurant reservation, so we have to go somewhere that's open a bit later, and but we usually have fun anyhow.
There'll be plenty of summer nights to consider that. Very final question for you. Tens of thousands greeted Nick Rockett when he came back into the ring in Aintree. Huge media coverage, all the rest since.
Thank you,
this evening, Loughlin Bridge, the Lord Bagnall. What does it mean to bring the stars home? I mean, we've seen it with Gallop and Deschamps. We saw with I Am Maximus. It's a chance for the friends and neighbours to pay their own tribute.
I think so. You know, racing in small villages around the country, there's so many people employed in racing and breeding, and it's such a big employer in the rural community in Ireland. You know, you have farming and then you have breeding, and they keep the countryside alive. And they keep the small villages alive. The amount of people that are here. Jim Bulger is across the road. Then you have Joe Foley and Burgage Stud, Ballyhane and Burgage, Pat Fahey, my brothers Tony, Tom, the Shark Hanlon, Hewick. He was there for a good while of the race. And they're all smaller trainers that have a huge impact on the local economy, because they all have staff that have to live here and live in the local villages. And that's why I think racing is so important to agriculture. I mean, people associate racing with betting, but I don't. I associate racing with the social side of it. What a day's racing does for people. It's, you know, I go racing to meet people, not to have a bet. I don't bet. I don't bother with it. I'm not very good at it. That's why bookmakers drive bigger cars than I do. But I look at racing from another side of view, from the social side and the rural community side in a small country like ours.